Hi everyone. Today my friend Janelle Abbott is joining me from the West Coast. She's amazing and she's done multiple amazing projects like wardrobe therapy and a collaborative project called Female. Janelle, would you mind telling all of our followers a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Oh, okay. Well, my name is Janelle. I live in Seattle, Washington. I do have a lot of projects going on. So for 7 years, I've been collaborating with my friend Camilla Carper, who lives in Los Angeles, and we go by Female, which is spelled Femail, because we work through the mail. So I'll start something here, send it off. Camilla will work on it, send it back, and then we just keep passing things back and forth like that. We call it reactive collaboration because we aren't directly communicating very often about what we're trying to accomplish. And so the work really has the ability to manifest itself. And we use a lot of our personal clothing and things donated from friends and family. It's almost exclusively reclaimed and secondhand materials. And then in my personal work, I go by JRAT because I used to write a fictional newspaper called the J.R. Abbott Times. And so the acronym is JRAT. And I don't do that anymore, unfortunately. I had to take a pause because fake news got very toxic. But it had been a very humorous and fun thing. Anyways, as JRAT, I make clothing and art. And I run a project called Wardrobe Therapy where I go to people's houses, have a conversation with them about their history with clothing, kind of where they're at the moment, where they see themselves in the future, and then we go through their wardrobe and try to find things that they really love but don't wear but can't get rid of. And then we have a conversation. What could this become? What would you actually need as a new contribution to your wardrobe? And so I deconstruct those items and turn them into new garments that they can wear once again.
And they're amazing too. I love all the things that you post. They're so cool. And
Thank you. Yeah, that's been a really fun challenge because previously I'm very dedicated to the zero waste methodology, which means, especially in pattern drafting, all the pattern pieces fit together like a giant puzzle. So nothing gets thrown away, nothing gets wasted. And I still adhere to that when I am doing more traditional garment construction. And I do wardrobe therapy, zero waste as well. But the project is always dictated by the client's personal style and needs. So every time it's totally different. And I found a couple ideas that I can kind of adjust to fit different aesthetics and different body types, but it's like reinventing the wheel every time I show up at a client's house and work with them through the project. So it's very labor intensive, physically, mentally, emotionally, but yeah, it's super rewarding because everybody's always really excited and they end up with things that they probably never would have otherwise owned. They're truly one of a kind. I'll have people message me, be like, I want to buy this. And so I'll send them a picture of what the two items that it began as. I'm like, okay, find this weird, like, polyester dress from 1970, and then get me like these 3 sweaters, and yeah, I'll make you that thing. But otherwise, like, it just can't happen again. So that's what I really love. Like, one of my taglines is like never to be seen again, because I make one of a kind clothing. I very, very rarely do replicas or do any kind of like mass production of anything. And if I do, I try to approach it differently every time, just so there's like subtle variations.
yeah.
I just feel like everyone is an individual, and so there's no reason we should all be wearing the same item of clothing, aside from like very basic things, like a basic white t-shirt, whatever.
Right.
But yeah, if you're layering garments onto your body in order to like express yourself in the world or like feel yourself in space and time, then you really should be wearing something that is truly unique and authentic to you. So I feel like that's what I ultimately try to provide with the clothing that I create, and just utilize resources that are being wasted. There's so much that already exists in the
There's a
world,
lot.
right? There's no reason to continue to manufacture wholly new goods at like there's just so much that can be reclaimed. So I'm on a mission. It's very small, but my
But
my part.
it's a good mission.
Thank you.
I'm actually curious now then, has COVID-19 affected you at all? I know that you're in Seattle, which is a little bit of a hot spot.
Yeah. Um, I actually was abroad when everything started to go down in Seattle. So when we got back, like the vibe was very weird, but people were still kind of going about their normal lives. And then all of a sudden, like, offices were shutting down, people were being asked to work from home. And in my work life, I have a studio space and it's my own space. I don't work with anyone else. So it's already its own little isolation chamber. So I could go there and I ride a bike. I don't have a car. So getting around was still pretty much approved or like okay. And then I worked for an artist weaving chairs, and his studio space also is very isolated. And whenever I work there, I'm usually the only one on site. So I was able to go up and do that work. The only big difference for me, because aside from all that creative work, I have a lot of like gigs, and some of them are very practical. Like I teach yoga, so I can take yoga for free. And because so much of my work is isolated, I also have a job giving tours in Seattle's Pioneer Square. There's like an underground part of the city. And so I take tourists down there and tell them all about the history. And that's really my only opportunity to socialize. And I've really enjoyed just getting to know people from all around the world and like being an ambassador for the city of Seattle in that way. But they shut down. So I kind of lost that opportunity to socialize. And yeah, ended up both feeling like increasingly aware of my level of isolation, but also like a level of comfort knowing everyone else is also isolated now. So I felt a little less sorry for myself. It's like, oh, we are really here suffering together.
I know what you mean though.
Right?
Something about knowing that everyone else in New York is suffering a little bit with me is comforting.
Yeah, you're like, I am not alone. Whereas like last year, I just increasingly started to feel very alone in my work, and it was bothersome to me. And now I'm grateful that my work is so isolated because I can continue to do it. The only thing I'm really concerned about is wardrobe therapy, because there is such a necessity of like close connection with the clients, like being in their space, working with them through their clothing, and doing that whole interview and intake process. I feel a lot of people on my wait list are not going to be comfortable doing that in this moment. And so I might just have to put the whole project on pause and move everyone back until there is like approval or the opportunity to get back into that work. So I'm a little worried about that in the future. And then this also came up just at a time, April 1st, I was supposed to have a big show. I created, because I work for that artist, I also dabble in furniture. So I wove chairs that have jackets woven into them.
Amazing.
So yeah, when you sit in the chair, you put the jacket on and you're like stuck.
That sounds so fun.
And then last year I was working on some rugs, and one of them have pants woven into it. So you put the pants on and then you're like stuck in the rug. You either have to sit or lay down. So that one was like an extreme relaxation tool. And the jacket chair is a little more insidious, but because it's very much about being trapped, and it kind of has that like electrical chair feel, like strapped into something. But I had to cancel that event because who wants to use interactive art in a moment where, yeah, this virus is running rampant. And then I also lost the venue and the ability to even have the show because they've now banned like gatherings of 10 or more people, I believe, in Seattle.
Same in New York.
Yeah, so I mean, aside from all of that, like the chairs, there's also, I made a bunch of other rugs, and I had all these sculptures and tapestries and paintings and a whole collection of 20 looks. And I had 3 bands scheduled to play at that show, plus a poet who was going to read. Like, it was going to be a really big thing. It was going to be like my big coming out as a solo artist, because I'm kind of moving increasingly more into focusing specifically on that, whereas previously I was like very scattered and sporadic about my work. So yeah, I've had to cancel all of that, which was really frustrating, but I felt capable to just roll with the punches. and instead move towards getting a video of the collection, the garment collection at least, on a catwalk setting. And so I have that all set up, and I have a lot of procedures about how to keep people compliant with social distancing. And, I'm using sanitizers, like spraying down the garments after people have worn them and handling them with gloves on as I get models in and out of the pieces. So I'm trying really hard to be like conscious of the kind of contact that my garments have with other individuals. But yesterday we went out and did a photo shoot, and I already felt a lot of guilt about bringing all these people together to have a photo shoot, but we did it in a big open public space. So I felt like maybe that would be more okay than doing it like in a contained studio space. And then some random woman just walked by and started screaming at us about not complying with social distancing. Yeah, and I already had all this anxiety about making my models somewhat vulnerable because I asked them to do something and they agreed to be within the vicinity of one another. And I was like, I really don't need this. But also I'm in a position where clothing it's like food, it expires. Like if you don't get it out in the market soon enough, you're gonna miss a lot of sales opportunities. You're gonna miss out on the season that the garments are appropriate for, and possibly even miss out on that moment of style, because the collection does flow with a certain trend right now. But I think it has a larger life and longer life than that, but still it's like very appropriate for this moment. And so I just feel this weight of like, I have to get it documented and I have to get it out the door. And how do I do that when everyone's confined to their homes? So it's been a struggle and it's been frustrating. But I'm just trying to make the kinds of adjustments that I can where I can. But some things like I can't compromise. I can't let these garments out without getting documentation of them, especially if I'm trying to make sales. I can't just describe in a block of text, be like, imagine this garment, it's these colors, like put up Pantone swatches, or just send like crappy images, from my iPad, or I could take photos of the garments just hanging. But there's so much vision around the piece, like there's so much emotional content and like historical information that I really wanted to imbue into it, and having certain types of photo shoots were important for getting that message across. So yeah, I've just felt like a level of guilt, but also like an attempt at compliance and canceling what I should and what I can, and then trying to make what I feel necessary to do, like this photo shoot, make it somewhat more compliant with the new standards.
Do you have any plans down the pipeline for how you're going to shift things? Because I know you mentioned a little bit about following all of these regulations and stuff, but is there any plans for how to get wardrobe therapy off the ground, or is it just really on pause, like 100% until later notice?
Yeah. Well, right now I have 3 clients that I need to get photos of. Like their pieces are already finished. So 2 of them are adhering very strictly to social distancing. So I just have to wait for them to be ready to come out of their house. The other one is struggling financially because they've lost a lot of gigs and they work in the service industry. And so for them, they're in a moment where they can't really adhere to a certain schedule, because if a job opportunity comes up or if an interview comes up, they need to be available for that. So yeah, I'm trying to be flexible with those clients. With other clients, I've got it all scheduled out. So there's about 4 to 3 people per month that I had planned to just show up, do the project, and keep moving on. So what I'm doing right now is just going to them and laying out the situation and saying, if you want to postpone, like, I totally respect that. Your name will still be on the list. I'll come back to you later. If you want to just go through with the project, I'll show up in appropriate attire. We'll just make sure that the garments you use are laundered, and kind of go from there and figure out how to make it work. And then other people, I'm like, if you just need to cancel, especially if you're in a situation where you can no longer afford to be a part of the project, then I'm just letting people cancel, because I don't take deposits. It's a very loose process because so many people that I'm working with are they're already on the margins. They're artists, they're
Yeah.
creative. You know, they work in kind of an unstable situation, and this city is so crazy expensive to live in, as you know, living in New York City.
Yeah.
It's like you're already on the edge, and so this is kind of breaking a lot of people. So yeah, if they need to cancel, I just let them out and keep their name on a list of, like, if they come back later when they're able to, I'm going to let them in. Or if they need to do a payment plan, I always offer payment plans to people up to 4 months if they want to just do installments. So yeah, it's really a case by case basis.
I think that really highlights the moral responsibility of companies too, because I'm finding right now that I'm starting to judge the companies that aren't offering any sort of empathy toward me. Because, you know, also a small business owner, like, what about the rent for the office that I'm not going to be in or using? Like, how are we going to afford that if the peak season when we make the most sales is no longer an option, right? Like, we sell the most from April to July, and that's definitely not going to happen now. Um, I mean, who knows? Maybe they'll send out a notice soon. But right now, I'm kind of like, what's happening? How come there hasn't been anything? We're all suffering. It's not just you.
Yeah, yeah, I totally feel that. And it's hard. It's like, what do you do? What do you
Yeah,
do? What kind of
yeah.
power do you have in that situation? And I'm lucky enough that my husband has a very stable job, and it's one that he can continue to do through this madness, because he works for a law firm who
Oh,
represents
that's great.
cyclists, and there's definitely going to be people getting hit by cars, sad to say.
Oh
And
no,
so,
it's true
right?
though.
I mean, like, that's not going to stop. And they have clients that they're working through. And there's only 4 people who work in his office. So he can keep working, and, like, he'll be able to support us even if my income falls apart. So that's very comforting for me. But I do worry about people who are in more precarious situations. And for my clients, like, I don't want people to miss out on this opportunity, especially if they feel like the process is something that could really benefit them. Even in this moment too of, like, processing things and, like, clearing out and coming into a better understanding of themselves and maybe a more inspired state. Because going through the whole interview process, people have the opportunity to say things they know but have never really they've never been given a venue to state those things, like what they know about their style or what kind of confidence they own but haven't been able to, like, internalize. So yeah, I don't I don't want to deny anyone that opportunity. So yeah, I'm just trying to
That's
keep it individual, keep it flexible, and
That's
then
really beautiful though, because your pieces are actually, they cause an emotional reaction right now. And no, in general. And I think right now is a good time for people who might need that, you know? They're so
yeah,
personal.
yeah, and that's definitely what I love about the process. And that's why I don't want to, like, just shut my doors and be like, it's over, it's too risky, because I don't think it is. I think if people are willing, we can find a way. Like, we can Skype the interview, they can mail me the pieces. Really, the most important thing would be the fitting, but if I can get accurate measurements without ever interacting with them in person, I'm becoming more confident in myself for making clothing for a really wide range of bodies. And that's something I've learned through this process, because going to design school, you're not educated about how to fit a body from
No.
size small to 3X. Like, nobody cares about anything above a medium
Yeah.
in fashion school, right? It's ridiculous. Because you get out there into the world and you find there is every different type of body, height, weight, proportions,
Hmm.
just, like, anything could happen with the body. And it's subject to change over time. And so I've I felt like I've gained a lot from working with so many different people, just coming to understand different body types, and also all the different ways that people want clothing to associate to the body. So I think maybe this can be another learning experience of how can I use the knowledge I already have to then conduct projects with clients that I never get to interface with. You know, maybe the whole project could be done remotely. This could be my opportunity to workshop that and figure out how to do it successfully without the fitting, without the in-person interview. So that could be a good learning experience for myself, so long as people still want to and can show up and be a part of it.
So my question for you then is, how can people help you the most right now?
Well, right now I'm still going forward with a catwalk video shoot for my new collection, Ugly House on the Prairie. I have 10 models who are each showing one look or 2 looks. So I have 20 looks total. I've got 2 videographers, 2 photographers, 2 sound engineers, and a day of coordinator who are all assisting me on making this video a success. And so getting support for those people is my number one goal right now. I would like to raise about $2,000 so that everybody can get paid, especially these people who they're in the performance and entertainment business and they've lost gigs. In Seattle, people have lost gigs through October.
What?
Like, yeah, the entire theater scene in Seattle has shut down for the rest of the year effectively. And some of these people are coming to model for me. And so it's like the least I could do is give them $50, $75 for showing up for 3 hours to do the shoot. So yeah, that's my big thing, just like small donations, donations of any size. If you go to my Instagram, my link right now goes to ticket sales for the original show, which is April 1st. And I was asking for $16 for that big event. So a $16 donation would go a really long way to support the individuals who are assisting me in making this project happen. But I also can send you like I use Brian's Venmo because I don't have my own. If I could show you my phones inside, I have a flip phone from like 2011.
I love that.
When you see it, it's like, wow, that really was a long time ago, even though it still can feel very close. Yeah, so like Venmo, PayPal, or buy a ticket. That's really the best way right now. My new collection is called Ugly House on the Prairie, and it's inspired by the ugliness of colonialism.
I love it already.
Part of that, right? Part of that comes from my knowledge of Seattle history and how extremely discriminatory the migration towards the West was. Like, if you were coming to the West in 1851, you would get free land, 320 acres of free land, only if you were a single white male. And if you were a married white couple, you would get 640 acres. So people of color and single women, they would receive nothing. And in Oregon Territory, if you were a person of color, it was effectively illegal to live on that land. So there was this guy, Oregon has had some of the longest standing racist laws in the United States, some of which weren't taken off the books until the year 2000. But there was a man who traveled the Oregon Trail. This is my favorite story. I don't get to tell my history right now, so this is my history story. His name was George W. Bush. True story, not a joke. He was a free African American. He was traveling the Oregon Trail with his family. He was married to a white woman and a couple other families. He was a completely ingenious frontier man. He knew how to survive. And so he kept his group alive. They showed up in Oregon Territory because they were hoping to live a life of freedom, but they were denied land because they didn't qualify because he was a person of color. So he had to move north. And at that point, it was the early 1840s. So Washington State was yet to be claimed. It was kind of dually used by Canada and the United States just for the resources that were available. And they were on the cusp of not quite a war, but a very strong disagreement about where to draw the border. So George W. Bush and his family settled about where Olympia is today, which is the state capital. It's south of Seattle. And he set himself up as this touch point for people moving farther north. He would provide them with seeds. He was a farmer. He educated them about how to work with the land in this area, how to have successful crops, and really outfitted people to survive as they continued to travel more northwards. So in 1846, the border was settled at the 49th parallel, which is north of where George W. Bush settled. So at that point, what became known as Washington Territory adopted the same discriminatory laws as Oregon Territory. So effectively, George W. Bush could no longer live on his land legally. And the first Congress of Washington Territory had to make a special provision to allow him and his family to continue to live on their land. And it was in part because of his major contribution to the further expansion north. They saw him as a benefit because of his knowledge and his like extreme generosity. And he was able to then keep his land. So that's very much what the collection is inspired by. And just kind of turning that like prairie frontier, you know, like dream fantasy fairy tale into this like very ugly, clownish, disgusting mess. And all the clothing's made out of garbage, right? My grandma collected a bunch of fabric. My grandma collected a bunch of fabric for me from the thrift stores. And it's like orange, royal blue, teal, pink, red. And then I found there's an old curtain factory in Seattle, and an art space moved in. And so they were selling all the old curtain fabric in the basement. And so I went down there and I was able to get like thousands of yards of fabric. So paired with all of that, just like really bold primary and secondary colors, I mixed in like soft pink and these like very pretty pastel stripes. And so everything clashes. It's totally nasty, but it's also very beautiful in that way. But yeah, that's kind of why it's called Ugly House on the Prairie, because there is a very ugly history of westward expansion, but it's not explicitly spoken of because the predominant narrative of America is white, and it is very positive for the white narrative, but it's extremely negative. I mean, obviously for the narrative of Native Americans, yeah, as well as the narrative of people of color who also were trying to expand westward to live a better life. So yeah, I want to get that work out there. So finding support to get the video, and we're actually shooting in the underground, which
amazing.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
Gonna be cool because it's like a big part of my time here in Seattle, and it does have some historic connection to the concept behind the work, and it's a very ugly space, so I think it's gonna be fun. Yeah.
Thank you. Would you mind also just doing a shout out to what your social media handles are?
Oh yeah, so on Instagram I'm at Janelle R. Abbott, and that's kind of all I use. Oh, I'm also at Female Forever, FEMAIL, and I don't do anything else. I don't have a Twitter, and my Facebook is just like personal, but you can look me up, Janelle Abbott, if you want to say hi on the Facebook. My website is janelleabbott.com, which is kind of a crazy deep dive into a lot of my madness. So, and femaleforever.com is also, if you go, also look up the Space Jam website from like 97, because I inadvertently knocked it off. They're very similar.
Thank you so much for taking time to meet with me today. I've already learned so much about the history of the West Coast.
Oh yes, come to Seattle and take my tour. I work for Beneath the Streets. It's a very fun hour-long romp, and you learn about the history of Seattle from 1851 through about 1907.
Wow.
And yeah, you see the underground and kind of learn why we created it. And yeah. Oh,
Cool.
I'm also, wait, if you want to see the chairs I weave, we're on Instagram.
Yes, yes.
It's at the chair repair. And I'm the only one who posts. So it's not all my work, but some of the chairs pictured are things that I have woven.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'll make sure to
Thank
put little
you.
screenshots of everything and handles at the end of this too.
Perfect.
Well, if any of you have questions, please feel free to DM me directly. You can also give Janelle a follow, and I'll get that link for Kickstarter or her fundraiser page as well. I believe she's also receiving Venmo payments. Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.